So a common BHC practice is just introductions. You know what I'm saying? We just like to know who's in the room. So first off, we'll introduce the team. My name is Robert Daniels. I'm a housing organizer for BHC, specifically located here in Seaside. So in the past year and a half, I've led 2 housing campaigns. So that's transitioning into co-ops. So I'll pass it on to my man Chago.
What's happening, everybody? Chago, neighborhood organizer, Salinas Thriving Neighborhoods. I'm Robert's counterpart in Salinas, and I'm really excited to be here because I don't know if you may have heard or not, but there's been a lot of movement in Salinas with the renters, and we're able to achieve or get in place 4 ordinances, and now we're here at this point where we're going to see something, get to explore another step to this. So yeah, and I'll pass it to Ben.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ben Nurse. A lot of things, father, son, brother. But I'm executive director of Jacana, it's a housing nonprofit, and it's a local citizen.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria. I also work for Building Healthy Communities, and I support Chavo, so Salinas Thriving Neighborhoods. And just a little bit of, I just know a little bit about co-ops, but basically it's turning into buildings into homes or livable places. But I'm sure that there's more knowledge, so I'm really good to all you.
I'm Shantae. I'm a coordinator for Building Healthy Communities at Monterey County Black Caucus on Robert's support today. And same with Maria with the co-ops.
So I am Annalisa. I sit on the board of the vice president of Him Plaza, and we recently just purchased a property on Phoenix, a 22-unit apartment complex, and I just want to know more about co-ops.
Good morning, I'm Rosalind Green, and I'm also Building Healthy Communities, Monterey County Black Caucus, Jacana, and several other community organizations and entities. And what I know about cooperatives is that it is a shared situation. And so in this aspect, in this arena, it's housing. And so it's about people coming together and sharing ownership. And that's what I know thus far, because I'm in spaces with these 3 experts. And so I'm here to learn more today.
Good morning, my name is Renee Young. I'm the Economic Justice Organizer with Building Healthy Communities and Monterey County Black Caucus. Before coming into this space recently, my only knowledge of co-ops was how, business co-ops, so local markets and community-owned businesses where there was an shared investment. I didn't know that it could apply to housing. And so what I bring to this space, aside from organizing experience, is also home ownership experience and home owning and home selling. So to kind of intersect what I knew about the business side of co-ops and then my personal side of home owning and home selling, I'm learning a lot in this space, and I'm excited to kind of see how things move forward in this area with co-ops.
My name is Ron Glover. I work with property management, apartment buildings. I'm part of the Chicana board with Ben and Franz. And what I've learned about co-ops, or knew about before, was similar to what Ron said, the understanding of the partnershiping of the tenants or people that live in a building or want to come and acquire a building. But I'm learning a lot more about it as Ben is doing the research and explaining it to us. So that's pretty much it.
I'm Luana Conway, and I'm just an activist, and I've studied the co-op movements and other places where they've been a little bit more robust, and I've been wondering for a long time why this region doesn't have some energy to make some significant moves like that. I worked with Communities for Sustainable Monterey County when I thought we were going to be trying to make some material changes on the ground, and gave that up. I worked with the population of Rippling River, a low-income facility near me, where they're trying to help them with their self-governance, and to see something that would allow people to do self-governance without that layer of the government ownership on top or another entity ownership on top. It's really exciting to me. Anyway, that's all I have. I'm here to learn about the actual mechanics of how you make this work.
My name is Horacio Mezquita. I used to manage a housing co-op and a marketing co-op and a farming co-op. And I also help other people to organize for dairy co-ops and forage co-ops. I worked many years on that. I work with my father to build 60 units for farm workers and their families back in 75, 76. And I managed that co-op for about 17 years. So I left the co-op in 2024 because I had to go back and help my family to farm some land that we've been farming as a co-op back in '74 when there was an anti-poverty program to build businesses and build homes. There were too many co-ops at that time, but they all disappeared. Most of the farming co-ops disappeared. There's still a few housing co-ops that still running. So co-ops are good for a way of having a home because my family was evicted many times. Not evicted, but we were told to move out. So that's what I know about co-ops.
It's an honor and a privilege to have Horacio here. He's got we've heard so much, so.
He's humble.
Yeah, and we're gonna learn more. Thank you, Horacio.
Anastasia Wyatt. I actually work for the City of Monterey Housing, and I am with Jacana as an advisor to the board. And I'm here to learn more, so I appreciate being here. Nice to see you all. Thanks.
Anastasia Monterey. I'm a resident here at Seaside, and I'm here to learn more about cooperatives.
Buenos días, Oscar Rios, interpreter from Watsonville. Pleasure to be here.
And I'm Chris, another Seaside resident who knows nada about cooperative housing, and that's why I'm here.
I'm Shreya. I teach at Cal State Monterey Bay. I've definitely been aware of co-ops, like business co-ops, for example, as a way to kind of build a kind of autonomy and forms of economy that are sort of independent and grassroots. So I've been interested in that for a long time. And then in terms of housing co-ops, I lived in New York in my 20s, and there were a lot of co-ops there, in different forms that were doing different things. But I had a good friend whose mom had been a part of a program like you all are proposing, this limited equity co-op. And so as like a single mom in New York City, she was able to put in sweat equity and get an apartment in Manhattan that she was able to pass on to her son and his family. So I always found that really inspiring. So I'm very interested to learn more.
First off, thank you guys for being here. This is an informational session on co-ops, so we always like to start with setting the agenda, which letting you guys know what we're about to get into. So first off, we get an introduction of the team. Robert who? Robert me. Anyways, while we're spending this time together, we're going to spend some time learning about limited equity co-ops and how it can be applicable here to Monterey County. We're going to go over a little bit of the training we took to become aware of co-ops. I'd like to say, even as a housing organizer, I didn't know co-ops exist. It came through like bumping my head against the wall, trying to find solutions. Rent is too high in Seaside, and a lot of these places are uninhabitable. They're not even up to code. So one of my biggest campaigns in the last 2 years I've been working as an organizer was making these places habitable, because they can't even afford it anyways. So now it was always, how do we transition tenants into home ownership? And so thank you, Ben, because he enlightened us with this training. We'll speak on a little bit, but we're also going to go into some local examples of co-op housing. There are 4 examples of co-ops here in Monterey County. How residents can own buildings collectively, like what is the management style, what are the things that need to be in place for tenants to own their buildings and run it on their own without a corporate overlord. What are the shared benefits of collective ownership? Like, what are the personal benefits, the benefits to each tenant? What is the benefits to the buildings, to the apartment complex, and what is the communal benefit as a whole? We're also going to go into some New York examples of co-ops and then 8 some next steps, how you guys can participate, things you guys can get behind, and what are some of our steps moving forward. With that, I will pass it to my colleague Chago to speak on some of the local co-ops in the area.
All right, so local co-ops, as we got to hear, Horacio, he mentioned the one co-op that's here. If anybody was listening, which one was he talking about? Can anybody was he talking about this one? Was he talking the Tres Palmas? Was he which is up in Pájaro, North Monterey County, right there, right next to Pájaro River. Was he talking about Las Casas de Madera, which is in Salinas on the east side, a place that my neighborhood where I grew up, but I didn't know. I didn't know what the cooperative was. Was it San Gerardo, the cooperative outside of Salinas? I thought I heard a yeah. Yeah, well, I'm going to go to Cooperativa Santa Elena, which is also in Soledad. These are the 4 that we know, and I know that Horacio had just mentioned, yeah, there were several back in the day. But the 4 that we can count were those that we got to see on this map. And the origin of these co-ops, the ones that I get to point to, the 4 that I got to point to, all came from labor movement, from the farm worker movement as a result. This was a whole, just like a whole trajectory from farm worker rights into the quality of life of a farm worker. What that presented, that opportunity to be able to be in that workforce and have your own home. You know, there was a time when farm workers were able to own their own home. And now a lot of us, or a lot of our communities, is struggling with that. But here were these models. Here were these examples of shared ownership. So the one in San Gerardo, right here, like Horacio was mentioning, there were 64 houses, 64 homes total, and approximately 256 residents. All right, so this is it's a community right outside of Salinas, right on the foothills of the Gavilan Mountains, and you could tell you're not in the city anymore. The air is different, right? There's vegetation obviously all around. There's agriculture, of course, but there's just a whole other different quality of life. And so the other one, Cooperativa Santa Elena, that's the one in Soledad, and that's the one that a lot of folks, when we're driving south on 101, you'll get to see it, like right on the left. It's there. It's mostly mobile homes, but there are some like traditional structured housing on that lot as well. And as you can see, what's shared here is right here. What's shared here is Las Casas de Madera. This is right there in the city of Salinas. I'd always hear about it, the cooperative, but I never knew any details to it. Didn't understand it. until one of the residents started getting involved with our work for renter rights. And it was through her we got to learn more about it, how there is a structure and how important it is for everybody to understand that structure. We're talking about adults and children. It's not rocket science, but it is tough to make sure that everybody has that same information. Then there is the cooperativa Las Tres Palmas over here, the in Pájaro. We had a chance to speak with one of the former site managers, Sylvia Prasad, and it was just this exciting example of cooperative living, and how her challenges in taking a leadership role. She benefited from learning so much, at the same time applying all of her skills that she brought to that community. And so now they're, I'll point to the monthly dues, just as an example of the monthly dues that are listed to live in these cooperatives, or live in the Tres Palmas, $670 a month.
Is that what you call rent?
You could call it rent, but it's more like a maintenance fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's not on top of anything else.
No?
Yeah.
That's what they're paying for their site in that particular
So
property.
naming it something different imbues a sense of commonality.
Kind of. It's more like, it's not exactly rent, and that's what we'll get into and why.
But that's how much they're paying for this, right?
That's what they're paying.
It's like a mortgage?
We'll talk about how it's structured as well. So what we're doing with that lead up is saying that we're not presenting something new. This is the legacy in Monterey County, this is the legacy in the country, this is organizing, this is labor unions. Cooperatives in the US are over 100 years old. There are over 300,000 cooperatives at one time in the US. And what Horacio was talking about with his experience with his father in the 70s was in California, we're talking about the labor movement and the farm worker organizing. So we're continuing that tradition, and exactly what BHC is doing here in Salinas is organizing residents. So kind of bringing back the memories and continuing that tradition. So nothing new, just reigniting it. So that's the intention here. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of the, what is the cooperative, I guess from a structure kind of setup. So as we talk about it, it's a corporation at the state level, so you organize a corporation. And then the members within the corporation own a share in the corporation. So here we're talking about real estate. So the corporation would own the building, and then the members would own a share in the corporation. So together, collectively, they own the real estate. Make sense? So from that, what does that give them? It gives them a right to a unit. In a mobile home, it gives them a right to a site. In the home in San Gerardo, it gives them a right to a building. A single family house, in an apartment building, it gives them a right to a unit. So they have a right to live in that unit as long as they choose to there, perpetually, as a member of the co-op. And it is not about what folks talk about, what they call the generational wealth. So it's not about wealth in terms of like, you're gonna see this exponential growth in the value. The purpose is for everyone to be able to live there and to afford it and to support each other, right? So once you're living there, you're not getting this $100,000, $200,000 increase. So it's really about just maintaining the community wealth and maintaining a quality of life. And we'll talk about some of the other benefits. So there's no profit motive, and the intention is that it'll increase slightly in value per year, so it stays affordable. So if someone buys it right now at 80% of AMI. In Monterey, that's like $90,000, something like that. In 10 years, you should still be able to buy it at 80% AMI. You know, whatever that salary is in 10 years. So the idea is that it increase maybe 3% per year in appreciation, and you should still be able to afford it 10, 20, 30 years from now. So that's the idea of how to keep it affordable. How is it structured and how is it managed, right? So we mentioned that the cooperative, the real estate owns the building, in housing in this case. And the members are the tenants, are the residents who take over their building, and the members make up the board. You know, so you start with a tenant association, a tenant union, turn it into a board, and they are the ones who manage their affairs, right? And then from that, the board hires management, like a general manager or a property management company if they wanted to go outside. And that property manager manages the staff, the maintenance crew, and all those other people that take care of it. But in the end, it comes back to the members making the decisions at the board level about what kind of community they want to have, what kind of rules they want to have. So at each cooperative, it's going to be different based on the humans in the room. So most cooperatives are set up like this. We sit in a room, we go, what kind of life do we want to have? Is it family focused? Is it worker focused? Do we want to do sweat equity, you know, to maintain it, to keep our costs down? So all of those kind of decisions are made by the members to organize and manage their affairs.
So there was talk about how there's like farm worker based co-ops. So my question is like, is that common where you'll find co-ops where there's the community residents all kind of share the same like lifestyle or careers or like occupations, and in that case, like, are there benefits to like having like a shared, like people get together and decide, yeah, we just want farm workers to live here, like people can do that, you're saying?
Or teachers.
Yeah, right, or teachers or whatever, hospitality workers or
Artists.
something. Right,
Artists.
so have you found that there's benefits to like that, like having that shared commonality amongst the residents?
I think
If that's a good question for, I mean, I don't know, we can, based on what we were able to observe and learn and are learning now, it contributes to that
Morale?
that morale.
That's
Your
that shared vision.
a shared vision.
Intention.
And if, I don't know if, oh, well,
Do you want to?
Horacio, if there's just any take on that?
Yeah, the reason that we built the farming co-ops and the housing co-ops, the San Gerardo, was because most of the farm workers were getting minimum wage and were never able to buy a home. Never. It was just paying rent and having food on the table and your necessities. So the way we built the co-op was we gathered together with Sister Torres, the founder, 60 families, and we put in over 2,600 hours of work. So we built them ourselves, and we hire a contractor that guide us and tell us what to do. So Saturdays and Sundays we're over there. Some of the students from Salinas, from Alisa, North Salinas, even Harner College, they were going over there and helping us out. So that's how we built those units. But the main point of the reason that we built them was to build equity and pay low rent. So the families will have money left on their pockets, and they were able to send their kids to school because most of the farm workers, the first generation, they were not educated, and they were not getting the right payment for the work that they're doing. Plus, they were evicted from La Posada. There were 38 families that were evicted in Salinas, and they put them in the streets. for about 18 days, 20 days. And then the city of Salinas sent them to Gamma Colony where they stay over there, but the winter was so cold that everybody left, only 6 doctors stayed. So what they did, they borrowed money from the USDA through an agency that was set up by President Carter, and they borrowed money from the federal government, and that's how they built it.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a really big question. I think it's really stultifying to be in a place where everybody does the same thing. I had a chance to live in student, staff and faculty housing when I was working at CSUMB, and I just did not want to work there, live there, because I didn't want my housing to be dependent upon my favor with the boss. And if you lose your job because they don't like the way, your union contract fails you or whatever, you lose the house, the roof over your head too. But that's a case where the management owns the housing, and I just shudder at all the talk of workforce housing. Say, oh yeah, we should have all the teachers here and all of this. I think it's an awful way to live, and that's what I like about the intergenerational part of this, is that you have people all mixed up with all kinds of random people that just happen to show up in this room. I'd happily live with any, in a big apartment building with any of you.
Well, wait until we
you're
sit together and
all different.
try to plan it. And see
So,
what happens.
it's a matter of choice though.
It is a matter of choice.
People all want to be with their same,
Yeah.
kind. I don't think that, is a good idea, but
Potentially.
I don't want to be
But
there.
to expand on it, is, most recently there was another artist co-op formed in San Francisco. And there are artist co-ops like that in Oakland and throughout the country. So people, to answer in a way that Chago said it as well, it's that like vision and like mission.
Yeah.
If you get together being, whether it's farm workers, whether it's workers, whether it's teachers or whatever, you at least are starting from a common goal. So now you make the work easier as you build it. So.
Thank you for answering the question.
No problem. And as you were saying, what it really is the democracy of it, is that co-ops are people-centered. So it's not about the real estate, it's not about the equity or any of that, it's about the people making the decisions together, and like he was saying, for their collective benefit, right? What is the situation we're trying to solve? How can we do it together so we uplift everyone together, right? No one's trying to lead it, no one's trying to benefit off the other, it's like, how do we do it together? So the focus and why it's really exciting and why it's worked over the years, that the members are making decisions for their benefit. So they're actively involved. They set the eligibility, they set the rules, they set the, like even reviewing the applications. So the co-op members are there at every stage and creating and nurturing, sustaining the community that we want to see happen. Let's see where.
So going on to what are some of the personal benefits of co-ops? Like what are some benefits to the individual outside of benefits to the building, benefits to the community? One is a higher level of satisfaction with their housing, meaning that they don't want to move communities, they want to move towns, they actually feel accepted and welcomed in their own space. And one of the biggest things for me is they pay less than 30% of their income. Last year we did a survey with Seaside renters to see how much of their income they spent on rent, and we had over 80% of the respondents say that they spent over 70% of their rent on 70% of their income on rent. So that means they couldn't start saving for a college fund, they couldn't afford a new car, they couldn't afford many things that we take advantage of. Also a low monthly cost, which also puts into more disposable income. They could go out more, they could entertain themselves, they weren't stuck in their community, things of that sort. Another benefit on more of like the legal tax side is they may qualify for mortgage or tax deductions, which is also a benefit, which can also lead to that disposable income. And it allows people who don't have an amazing credit score to come in and find home ownership. So that can be a caveat for the members, when they review applications, that they're not, they're not specifically putting priority to their credit scores like most renters do in the city.
But inversely, they can't build credit too.
Say it again?
Like they wouldn't be able to then build credit either by paying monthly, right?
I think they'd be part of the loan structure, so I think they might be building credit.
By being part of the co-op, you mean?
Right. Like if they're saying they can come in without their credit being considered, but then people are paying every month, like with hoping that they can build some credit too, if we're doing that consistently.
Yes. You know how as a renter in a building, your landlord can report your rent payments to the credit unions?
Yeah.
So as a co-op, you are, you own the building together, the corporation owns you usually have to take out a loan to buy the building to renovate it. So the taxes that we're talking about is that you have a portion of the taxes allocated to you that you can write off, right? And the payments that you make in each month can be reported to show that you're being consistent with the payments as well. So it is a way to build credit and have tax write-offs if you itemize them.
So long story short, you can build credit being part of a co-op.
I've seen co-ops in Arizona, so my other Arizona person over there, and when you see them online for sale, you have to pay all cash, like $130,000 upfront cash. Is that how that works?
Not necessarily. That one is probably market rate co-op,
Okay.
not necessarily a limited equity.
Uh-huh.
So market rate would be like buying a condo or something like that
Yeah.
in terms of prices. They may have been limited equity and then they went to market at some point. We're gonna try to avoid those. But with a limited equity, it's more that you pay a small membership fee to come in, and then you structure it based on your ability to pay your income.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that's like a huge barrier to get in that case, to have all that cash.
And members can structure a way to support each other to pay a membership fee, whether it's an increased membership maintenance fee moving forward, or I've even heard of examples of members loaning each other the membership fee to allow each other to use the co-op. So there are workarounds.
I have a question with regards to the collective ownership. What exactly are residents owning? And is it an appreciating real estate asset or shares in a corporation with capped resale value? And I ask that because if they were to get into financial issues, how much of a say will the co-op, meaning the board, will have on the shares that they own? And how is this better than opening up a pathway for ownership if we're selectively putting a co-op or a property underneath the same structure as a corporation, so we're just changing the ownership, but the ownership never really goes to the residents? I know that's a lot, but I'd like to understand that.
Me? Or I'll jump in. On the structure, we mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's the corporation owns the real estate. The corporation is the co-op. The members own a share in the corporation, and the corporation owns the real estate. So together, they're collectively owning it. You know, in terms of getting into trouble, it's really maintaining and sustaining the corporation and the co-op together. So that's where the monitoring comes in. That's when the experts are working with them to continue to keep it going.
They eventually own it, is what you're saying.
But they do own it. They own it together.
The bank owns your house before you pay off your mortgage.
Yeah, it's not about an individual ownership in the way that the question was structured. It's a collective ownership. But I think a lot of it will become clearer as we go on.
The only reason I ask that because I'm trying to understand the trade-off where we're talking about the collective ownership, which they don't own the building, they own shares to that building. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. They don't own the building, they'll own shares to the building.
Right,
and then
the first part to clarify is that they do own the building as a collective.
As a collective, but individually, even though we're not talking individually, if somebody wanted to get out of it and say, go down the pathway of ownership, the ownership and affordability part, are we also permanently limiting individual equity growth in this process? Meaning that in the long term, if we're deciding to take this stock off the private market, the depreciation value is not going to be there, it's going to be set. But at the long term, we're we're not creating a pathway for ownership? Is that something that's gonna be considered later on? And I mean ownership like land and a deed, because the deed is gonna be held by the corporation, which again owns the building, perhaps the land, I'm not sure, but only will have shares. Individuals will only have shares so that you collectively own it.
What we'll do is as we go through the whole thing, because those are bigger questions, that a lot of it will come through the discussion, but a lot of it will come through planning together. So if we allow that process to unfold, I think we'll get there.
Can I say something too? I think just having affordable housing too will help somebody save. So if they want to at some point move on, they're building equity that way. And they're building the ability to save money and eventually maybe have a more standard mortgage down the road. But right now, as people are paying 70% of their income towards rent, you can't save and build your equity and life. So I think that's part of the overall thought process with this. But
It is.
I'm excited to learn more, I'm just saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the co-ops, you can build them however you want. You can build them to build equity as a private, you can build limit equity. The one that we built was a limit equity because most of the farm workers do not have the money to buy the equity on the co-op. So what we were doing is, if somebody was moving out, we collect all the equity of each individual member, and from the co-op, from the funds, we'll pay off him, he will move out, another one will come in, and he will be paying little by little to stay there. And that's how we were able to keep the rents low. When I was there, a 4-bedroom was $480, 3-bedroom was $430, and a 2-bedroom it was $260. We maintained that for about 20 years, 25 years. When I moved out, they went up $50, but that's all they've been heading up in 25 years, $50.
Horacio, could you tell us where it's at?
That's the San Gerardo.
Is that right?
Yeah, and the co-op.
The one in, outside of Salinas? The community that's right outside of Salinas?
The co-op paid about $2.2 million to the USDA to construct the project. But when I went and checked the records, we pay over $4 million back to the government. So the taxpayers' money that was invested in those co-ops gained, didn't lose. So if we get programs where you borrow money from the U.S. government at 1%, 2%, you can build co-ops everywhere. And we can have families have housing instead of having kids or young people to be struggling the way it's happening right now. So it depends on when you do your equity evaluation, what kind of co-op you have. If it's limited, or is it going to be going up according to the market?
Yeah.
But if you build it according to the market, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more. Yeah.
Thank you, Horacio. Yeah, the lived experience is in the room, so.
Well, the equity doesn't, there's still equity, you know, the way things have gone so far, I mean, there's still gonna be equity there somewhere. It just doesn't mean that that's your whole purpose for building equity, is so you can pay somebody else $1 bazillion, because the cost keeps going up.
It's definitely an affordable housing model.
Yeah.
It's not profit driven, so that's how do we keep things affordable in a neighborhood that's facing gentrification? So let's get to the neighborhood, was it the neighborhood level or building level?
You can start at the building level.
Building level.
Alright, so here are some benefits for a co-op as a building. The resale policy keeps unit affordable for future generations. So say you buy an apartment complex, we know here market rate that rents have gone up exponentially in the last 10 years. So what does that mean for your kids as they're growing up? Having policies inside of the co-op, inside of the corporation that keep units affordable for long term. That is one of the biggest caveats I could put and one of the biggest motivators for having a co-op in an area such as Monterey County, because we know it's going to keep getting worse here.
One example of how the co-ops can do that is like, you know that the expenses will go up, the utilities, maintenance costs and all of that. So one example is to fix the increases at 3%. So you just increase the maintenance fee that you pay at 3% per year. And that's usually about inflation in this region. And you just do that over 30 years, but the intention is that your income should be going up a little bit, matching it as well over time. So it keeps it maintained over that period. And usually when you build a co-op or convert the co-op early on, you would do like a 30-year sheet showing what the value should be if you wanted to sell in 10 years or 20 years, if you wanted to sell out. So we should know what someone would pay 30 years down the line by keeping it fixed.
That's also keeping kind of like a 3% increase in, or let's say, the owner's equity of their unit so that it's still affordable 10 years from now for someone else on a fixed income or limited income.
If someone's moving out and someone's buying in, it should still be
still
affordable.
afforded by 10 years later.
And you can keep the rents low. Sometimes even you can lower them, depending on how you build income inside the co-op. Like rental units, we built 4 rental units. We built a child care center. The only reason San Gerardo cannot get more equity is because it's far away from the city. So we have to deal with water issues, wastewater. But other co-ops that are within the city, they have that advantage because they have all the services. And so what we were doing is, instead of bringing contractors and charging us $100 per hour, we got people training them on doing the work inside the San Gerardo, so we didn't have to pay so much money to keep the units in check.
Additionally, the foreclosure rates for these co-ops are less than 1%, which is amazing. From our observation, the eviction rates are pretty similar too, so people aren't getting kicked out of these co-ops. They're really communal, collective housing. Co-op buildings are usually better quality than similar market rate rental units. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty beneficial. Especially with disposable income, people have the ability to upgrade their units more, add some like amenities, some accommodations. Co-ops are actually cost less to operate than similar buildings, which is amazing. It's a good question.
You can finish that and then I'll come back to it.
I'm done with that. Go ahead.
You said something that that turned the light switch on for me about basically upgrading or renovating or like increasing your value, your amenities. Is that an out-of-pocket thing, or does that come with the co-op? Like, you pay in to the kitty, is that like, so you can increase value, or is that only like for emergencies if something happens with the plumbing? Or can I say, hey, you know what, this GE model stove is outdated, or this linoleum is, needs to be pulled? Like, how does that work?
Well, the co-op will handle a lot of the maintenance or repairs, like let's say toilet roll, things like that. As far as like the commodities, that would definitely come out of pocket. But like repairs, like roofing, plumbing, electrical work, that should be covered within your maintenance fee that you pay inside the co-op. So that's not something that you would come out of pocket to.
But even the stuff that you come out of pocket for, basically though, it's yours.
Yeah.
So it's not like,
It's your space.
it's not like I'm like upgrading this space and then, you know, either my rent's gonna go sky high or, you know, or the chances that I could have to move and someone else benefits from.
Like your
So-
house looks better now than your neighbor's.
Yeah.
Like, does that mean?
They're gonna kick you out
Yeah,
of your neighborhood?
yeah,
No, that's not
yeah.
gonna happen. It's your, it's your
Yeah.
space, you get to upgrade it as you want, according to the bylaws that are set by the corporation and the members of the corporation.
Okay.
So the members again determine how, you know, what changes you can make, but it's usually, what we've seen is usually a floor. So it will say that everyone should have quality floors, quality bathrooms, quality kitchens. So if we needed to renovate and maintain them, each year we budget, the co-op would budget to see, you know, how many, are we gonna do 5 units this year, 5 units this year, the painting and so on. But we have heard, like in San Gerardo was one example where they allowed, you know, different owners to change the colors of their homes, for instance, you know, it wasn't all the same. So again, it's up to the members to decide those details.
Yeah, and they also renovate their kitchens and living rooms. They did a lot of renovation, but you put it in a letter, and you submit it, look, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And once you do that, you submit it at the board, and whenever you move out or you stay there, that's recorded that you do upgrades, and you will get some money back if you move out. If you don't move out, that's gonna be your living space the way you want it.
And that's a great segue to this, the neighborhood level, being rooted, remaining rooted in your community. We know that there are now three generations in San Gerardo now that are still living there. Of the 64 units in there, there are 7 that are being rented out, and all done through agreement. It's a collective community experience that requires that each resident be informed as possible because it is theirs. And it's that way that there can be an avoidance of any type of scenario where predatory element, like many of us have been aware of in the early 2000s. This is now a shared experience, one community, and with the fact that they're able to stay multiple generations, and again, I point to San Gerardo, because at the last session that we had in Salinas, there was a young resident who came and spoke to how she just wants to remain living there because of the safety, just how safe it is. And just having that peace of mind that you know your neighbors.
Everyone's looking out for each other.
Bottom line, and I know I feel a little benefit when I get to know some of my neighbors, but I don't. Not as much as I wish I should. But San Gerardo, it's like, wow, 7 out of 64 units and have moved out, right? Or renting, and the remaining 57, right? They're still rooted, remaining rooted, and the degree of how well you know your neighbors is going to determine just how, just the level of safety overall, the level of safety, and what that invites from each resident is the opportunity to participate in manners that are gonna benefit back to benefiting the whole cooperative. There's a leadership element that comes from understanding and learning, like, oh wow, this is important. We do all have rights, and we're all playing a part in this. that type of leadership we don't get to see that type of leadership get developed in our regular neighborhoods. You know, because everyone's busy working and
Well, you're too afraid. You're too afraid.
too afraid. But in a neighborhood where you grew up and everybody knows you and they saw you grow up, and now you have your children and even your grandchildren that are able to continue
You're gonna
that legacy.
protect each other, yeah.
That's it. That's where it comes down. Strong, a real strong neighborhood, a real strong community. And I know for a fact that I can point to a number of families that have been able to see their children go on to college, return, and still remain part of the San Gerardo community. I keep pointing back to that one because it's one I'm familiar with, and we're going to continue learning more about what we have.
Yeah. And speaking of that one, there was also Tres Palmas, the one by Pajaro, the mobile home, the farm worker mobile home community. And we learned there that I think it's 20-something units at that location. And most of the residents and occupants from that location are all from one village in Mexico and have been together over decades. Their children have come in, and it's been just this kind of comfortable community where everyone knows each other, the culture is the same, the language is the same. So it's been really interesting to talk to Sylvia and learn about that. So we interviewed each of the leaders of the local co-ops just to learn more and understand the legacy, and continue to work with them. Horacio is here, for instance. One of the things I wanted to mention, to go back to an early question that we didn't have up here, so co-ops are part of what they call shared equity housing models. So shared equity is always like, if you, in Marina here you know it, or Monterey you know it as the below market rate housing, for instance, where there's some public subsidy put into it. So there's like, low income people pay a certain amount, and the public dollars put in another amount. So in the overall shared equity models, Grounded Solutions did a study a few years back and found that I think 67 or 65% of folks who have lived in a shared equity model go on to purchase a market rate house. And that's based on the ability to save, down payment, equity, and all of those things. So the co-op does that as well. So instead of paying 70-80% of your income, you're paying 30% and saving the rest towards these other things. This is a slide we're going to see twice. We wanted to kind of introduce and then come to this as to what are the steps, and then we'll go on to chat with some other things and get more input. So the steps are these. I mentioned if we're talking about a building level, because co-ops can take different forms. It could be a single family house, it could be land, it could be business. But let's say it's an apartment building. For instance, a 20-unit building on Phoenix. You start with organizing a tenant association. So the tenants get together and decide if they want to take the opportunity to take over their building. The tenant organization could be like a little board. It's like a practice board of making your own decisions, managing your affairs. You work with groups like us to do the training, like what does it take? What is a co-op? How do you manage it? And continue that process. But then you also approach the landlord as one option to try to purchase the building. Other options are that the landlord is in violation and you need to sue the landlord and force them to sell the building. There are different approaches, or you work with the city or government authority to take over a building. There are different ways to acquire it. But at that beginning stage, when you're working to finance and acquire the building, you're also looking at how to renovate it, because you want the residents to move into a quality home and be able to start with a quality home. So you're purchasing and renovating at the same time. And that process can take, or you're building from scratch, you can do that as well. That process can take a year and a half to 2. And during that time period, you're working with the residents to train them and work to give them the ownership and take over the ownership of the co-op. So that's the process. And then there's the ongoing monitoring where folks like us would look at their budget, their board practices, on an annual basis to make sure and to work with them to be successful over the long run.
So I know this is a co-op and it's similar to land trust. When you're talking about buildings, are you also going to be looking at the land to own the land or just the building structure from perhaps, say, for example, the Hem or the San Pablo Apartments, right? If either you force it or you don't for them to sell, are you going to be looking into the land or just the building again? And if so, how much authority does the collective management provide if major financial decisions or constraints by lenders, regulatory agreements, and now the affordable covenant comes into play? I'm assuming that they're going to have training in that, but how much authority are they really going to have if those constraints are going to be the determining factor in any scenario?
The authority is determined collectively. It's what we keep running into each cooperative. Everyone needs to learn the bylaws, and that's how there is the we. There isn't a how are you going to do it. There is it's a how are we going to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but what I'm saying is when there's major financial constraints or decisions that are being made, right? Ms. Green stated, if I wanted to upgrade my particular apartment and I send in my proposed to the board and they decide, yes, your particular unit can't be upgraded in that way. But if there's a larger issue and there's not enough financial backing for that, who has that ultimate decision when we talk about financial constraints? Because that's not going to come down to the board, that's going to come down to the deed holder and the financial, who's funding the building.
I'm gonna refer back to
Yeah, back in,
Like, have you seen challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah.
And I only ask that because these are important questions, because you don't think about this when you're creating this, but in the long run, there are restraints where that lender will say, no, we're not gonna, that's not financially safe for you. And then the residents are kind of left like, oh, so how have you handled those challenges in the 25 years that you lost?
yeah, in 2005, the co-op was almost taken over by the USDA government because the management and the board were making decisions that were not suitable for the co-op, and they made mistakes. So one of the reasons I left the farming businesses of my family was to go and help out because I already had managed 2 other co-ops. So for me, managing another co-op was not a big issue. So what we did is I went to the USDA and I told them give us 6 months, a year to fix up the problem. We asked the members, say we gotta pick up the rent, $30, and we gotta pay back, put everything in order to the USDA. And in a year, we put everything in order, and then we cut expenses. One of the things that we cut was refrigerators, stoves, heaters, anything that the members were using, they need to pay it. So that was a huge outlet for the co-op. So instead of going forward, the reserves were getting down because everybody wanted to have everything switched. So we cut that, and then we start putting more community hours. Instead of bringing people to charge the co-op, we did it ourselves. And the most important thing is not the general manager, it's not the board, it's the whole membership, the one that decides what's best for the co-op. So if a board makes a mistake or the management, everybody has to go and straighten them out. Because it's not right for members to lose their membership because of the mistakes of somebody else.
Thank you. And what we've seen in our studies as well is that the last part that I mentioned on this was the monitoring, the ongoing monitoring part. And many co-ops do get into trouble over time, but those that have a ongoing monitor, and again, a monitor is looking at the board practices, looking at the decisions, making sure they're compliant with the lender requirements, with any regulatory agreements from like a city or state if they take money, and making sure that their financials are in order. So those are the ones that succeed and continue to do well over time. So that's what Horacio was doing coming in, he was restructuring them. So
Want to kind of take another look at what we know of, or the 4 that exist here in Monterey County. Well, there are so many much more. I'm like, this is what blows my mind, right? Like, oh wow, this is the whole idea of collective ownership. We have 182 in the state of California. We look at, and what's crazy, now I gotta say this because every time it's like, when those who are about the not in my backyard argument, I'd always hear at the end of their speech, like, and we don't want to end up like New York City. And we went to New York in January, and we got to see, we learned how over 3,130 co-ops exist. It's a cooperative community. And because it works, right? And it's been that way since the early 1900s, late 1800s. And we could look at, other communities throughout the nation, but the closest one up here was in the state of Illinois, 263, and I think California is third, 182. So
we mentioned that those are the numbers, like the overall, but the collective numbers are around 300,000 that they work, and about 100 and something, I think 160,000 of them are supposedly still limited equity co-ops. So UHAB is the group that we worked with. They're out of New York. I don't think anyone mentioned it here, but in the 70s in New York, there were New York was nearly in bankruptcy in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of owners were burning their building to get the insurance. So much of the Bronx and a lot of Brooklyn was on fire. And there was a lot of tenants squatting. So the city took over, I think, like 10,000 buildings or something in like a year. And we're trying to figure out how to unload them. So working with the tenants, this is basically a tenant grassroots organization that started up in the 70s with low-income residents. They work together to figure out how to, one, squat, rebuild their buildings with sweat equity, and then work with the city to take them over and convert them to co-ops. So UHAB has done over 30,000 units in the last 53 years, and now they do training nationally. They're working in LA with a group that did the mansion tax. They're working with us. They're working throughout the country. So the 3 of us did a training with them to try to figure out how to bring this knowledge back to Monterey County. So this total number is 3,822 co-ops with a total of over 300,000 units. So this is not small, and this is a major thing that's going on.
it's Manhattan.
Yeah, Robert, this is you. This is your thing.
See, I was happy.
You said it's happy place.
It was a promise right there.
Yeah, so in New York, we went and visited a few co-ops. I think about 6 in total. It's the building right here. Beautiful building. I've never been that high up in my life. It was a beautiful building.
How many floors is that? How many stories?
20-something.
1, 2, 3. I don't know. It was pretty high though. I never been that high before. And the view was amazing. And to see it as a co-op, it was a unit that was going to be remodeled. Not remodeled, but it was getting prepared for somebody to come in. So just to see like a blanket unit, to see how people were coming in was beautiful. But what really hit me was there's a building just like this right next to it that the rents were about $4,500, $4,800. This co-op itself, I think they were paying about $670, which was amazing. I was like,
$670.
$670.
Wow.
To get that view, amazing. I was
How
like,
do people
wow.
ever get to move into a place like that? How do you ever get to, apply and get in?
I think a lot of it is word of mouth. I mean, there's different ways that they advertise for the
Who you know?
In New York,
No, I
once
wouldn't
you
say
get,
that.
we got a number in New York, we'll give it to you once you want to go back there.
Yeah.
Trying to make it happen over here though, in the meantime.
Yeah, so this particular co-op was something Horacio mentioned, just to emphasize that. This one had a mixed-use element. So they have the 4 buildings with 434 units, but they also had a commercial pharmacy that was paying them rent. And they also had a grocery store on site that was paying them rent. So they had the resources that they can use, but also the income that was coming from it, and that was going to lower their overall costs.
All I'm saying is, I can't imagine it's so competitive. It would be so competitive to have a place like that in Monterey or anywhere that people would just be, hiring hitmen to be able to get to the top of the list.
I don't think we go that far, but I know a few people who might, but the businesses were tenants. Paying.
See, that's.
The businesses were commercial tenants paying to the co-op ownership.
But they live there in the building.
It was like, I think it was like a Walgreens or something.
Yeah, this was like a.
They had like a Walgreens on the bottom floor.
On the bottom floor.
Walgreens pays the building, so it keeps the rents low. So it's a way.
But that's something that could be considered, right? Like tenants can open up their own
Is that the
businesses
same as
club.
the Disneyland building?
Disneyland building.
You know the building across the street from Jack in the Box? The building across the street from Jack in the Box from Seaside.
The grocery
Over
outlet?
there on that building, the Disneyland building. Yeah, you guys don't know the landscape in Seaside.
I'm the
You're
Jack
not
in the Box
really from
Disneyland.
Seaside.
You're talking about
The one where the nail shop is,
Baskin
Subway
Robbins.
sandwich, Baskin
But why do you
Robbins.
call it the Disneyland building?
Because the structure of it.
Oh.
You have to-
I thought you had to on Earth. When you said across from Jack in the Box, something like grocery outlet or the FedEx building.
yes.
You talking like Subway and the meat
Yeah.
Yeah, the metering.
Because that's, it's like, it's like mixed use.
Yeah,
The
mixed
rents
use,
yes,
up,
yes.
upstairs are not as expensive
Right.
because of the
Because
the
of
buildings
business
downstairs, the
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Wow. I was like, Disneyland, that's in Valentine's.
I'm gonna pull all y'all Seaside cards, especially Ron's though. They wait to tell his dad. They know the name of the building.
But I think part of Renee's question was, and yours was whether those businesses can also be co-op businesses.
Yes.
Right. So they can be,
Not like a big corporation like Walgreens, which is almost like
Yeah.
an oxymoron.
right.
For the
Which is
whole
still good though,
Yes.
because they pay the,
There is that, but if you really wanted to make it a business that's really serving the community and is coming from the talents within the community,
okay.
it could be co-op businesses and those keep the costs down. Yeah, so there is that too.
It's just used as an example that the members of the corporation have creative ways on keeping the rents low.
Yeah.
Whether it's commercial space or market rate rent units, whatever that looks like.
But I heard him say, what's your name, sir?
Oh, that's it.
I heard him say earlier that the inception was because they didn't have enough money. They were making minimum wage or below minimum wage. And so in the perfect world, is it based on your income or is it just because you want to live there?
It's based on your income.
Yeah, it's based on income. This isn't for rich people to come and have low
Okay,
rents.
okay, because I'm going back to what she said that.
Well, what do you do about Section 8? Because Section 8 units do fall under the inspection by the government that applies the voucher.
So Section 8 is used in co-op buildings as well.
Oh, wow.
As well as tax credits.
We didn't use it because for over about 27 years, nobody moved out because the members, the first generation, they passed away, so they leave it to the kids, and the kids, they don't want to move out because all the money that you save there, you can go to school or you can invest in another house outside or buy a home and then move out and give it to another brother and so they never move. They don't want to move.
That's the intention. So this is the one you were talking about, this slide here.
Yeah. This is a monthly cost comparison. This is the building that we visited, the Village East Co-op. See, for a one bedroom, they're paying about $870. A quick Google search of the surrounding neighborhoods show that average rents around there is 4,300. It's ridiculous. These are like 700 square foot apartments. Anyways, in Stuyvesant town, they're paying 48, and that's rent only. That's not including utilities and everything. Oh, and I forgot about the building that we visited had a pool. Had a pool in it. That's crazy.
Nice.
That's crazy. It's amazing. I'm a swimmer, so I love it. Anyways, and the biggest thing to highlight, this is housing authority prices. NYCHA is New York City Housing Authority. So these are the prices that people in Section 8 and Housing Authority are paying compared to the co-ops. So my biggest thing that I've took from this is that if somebody can afford to pay rent, they can afford to own the building.
Wow. A clap go right there.
Yeah. Renee?
So my question goes, feeds off of what you just said, but also kind of a couple slides back where you talked about just that next steps and how getting together to make a purchase offer. So when I think of, like, let's say this house across the street, if I wanted to approach them and make an offer on that house and say it's worth like $900,000 right here in Seaside, and I make an offer for 900, they might be inclined to accept that if they've had the house paid off, right? If they've owned it for 30, 35 years and they'd be getting a big profit because they aren't paying a mortgage, they're just paying their taxes. However, they might be less inclined if they have less equity and have only owned it for 5 years, right, to accept something like 900,000. Now, I'm kind of thinking of that where it's like if I was to buy that house and now I have to pay back $900,000, regardless of my income, it wouldn't help me to be told, well, guess what, you only have to pay less than 30% of that each month. I still have to pay $900,000 over time. So in this scale, I'm wondering, how do you approach a property, like a landlord, with this vision and this purchase of maybe 2 to 3 million, because it's a building, and then offer the residents 30% of their income? How is that? I might be just missing something like super common sense, but I'm like, how are people paying so little for such a huge purchase initially, especially when the landlord could possibly have owned the building for so long that they're not even paying to a bank anymore? How? I'm missing something.
That's a great question.
The way, oh, sorry. The way you pay 30% is according to the loans you have. Our loans were 50 years, so that's why
that makes sense. It was a long.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I saw how much money was going out to the USDA government, it was outrageous. So I tried to refinance, and I got blocked because the water contamination, the pesticides, and the co-op bank didn't want to lend us money because of that, just by having water contamination and pesticide poisoning. So once we fixed the water issue, we got a loan, we paid back the USDA, and we were saving $100,000 a year. It was now staying in the co-op. And then once we refinanced, we went back and paid the bank, and we saved another $100,000. And from being from 150, we already, when I left, there was about $1,150,000 on reserve. So you can even cut the rent, but it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's better to have the reserves for anything that you want. When we started that, it was 2.2 million worth the property. Now it's over 40 million, but because it's a limit equity, it's only worth 12 million. And if you want to sell it, if everybody says, okay, we want to sell it, you have to convert from a co-op to a corporation, and then you sell it. But so far, the members don't wanna do that. They wanna stay there, they live in peace, and they don't wanna deal with selling it.
Like just long commitments over generations of paying this off and strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there's ways that make that model more affordable. Like in New York, they gave them like was it a 40-year tax abatement?
Okay.
So they didn't have to pay any property taxes for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
So
And
there's
some
ways.
incentives and conditions to.
Yeah, but there's a way they make it affordable that kind of address those long-term needs or like long-term. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
there's always creative ways to address that, and then there are ways that your local city government, county government can incentivize programs like this.
Yeah.
And we mentioned also the subsidy, like he's saying, the subsidy could be the property tax abatement, but it can also be like state dollars, like grants. So they can put in $1 million from the state level, they can put in 500 from the county level. So it reduces the cost, but you're also trying to get low cost mortgages, low cost lending.
And then the refinancing too
Right,
is big.
to keep the costs low. But you also, I think Luana mentioned it, you're spreading it across income levels. So the intention, ideally in the building you should have like low, like 30% AMI up to like 80 or 100% AMI. So you're spreading it across those income levels. And you're making it so that everyone is paying a comfortable and fair share. And the way that you're able to get the financing is based on the income. So you're basically saying, like Robert just said, we have the income to pay this. We're taking back the $200,000 that the landlord was getting in profit, and we're putting that back into the
But
building.
it's not just like off an appraisal, like, well, we think that this is worth $3 million, so that's how much you have to buy it for. It's like, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, a lot of those appraisals are in the ideal of a profit margin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when you remove that profit margin, including with subsidies, you make it possible for people to own their building and stay there for long term, even through financial burdens.
I just want to mention one thing. Many of the residents there, they were getting old. There's one lady that is 96, she still lives there. And they could not, they were living in a 4-bedroom, they could not afford to pay the $480 because her Social Security was $800. So we put a reserve from that same reserve, and we match it to the 30%, even though she was paying 10%. So if she was gonna pay $100, the co-op will put in the $383, so we don't have deficits on the budget. Yeah.
I can see some incentivized projects like that facility, the 80-bed Rippon River, 80 apartment unit near me, was rumored to be up for sale by the county. And then they kind of changed the way the Monterey County Housing Authority works. And it's almost like contracted out. They own a bunch of properties around here. But they, were saying we need to sell this, it needs renovation. And that would be the kind of place you could go in and, make offers and try to work deals. And they own lots of places.
And to be ready for those kinds of opportunities.
But what a great deal for them, because, they are paying 70, the government is paying 70% of the rent, and it's upside down to what it could be, with a co-op kind of arrangement. That money is going nowhere, it just goes out there, it goes to the investment class, to Larry Fink, BlackRock and all those people. It goes nowhere. This is bottom up.
Right, this is bottom up, and to be ready for those opportunities to make these kind of moves collectively as a community. On our last day, we got to visit this building in South Bronx, which was right in the neighborhood where hip hop was born. Yeah, there's actually a part of it's part of one of the co-ops, actually. Yeah, 1157 something. Anyways,
you'll be back.
Yeah, so it was super exciting to be there. I was like, oh wow, South Bronx, and then we got to see this. We walked into this building, and we're learning like, these tenants who had been there, for so many years, were really like, they were noticing how their neighbors, the rent for the neighbors was going up, and gentrification was hitting hard. And they were like, okay, the landlord's not raising the rent. Has your rent raised? No, not yet, not yet, not yet. And they were like, okay, let's just keep it to ourselves, we're not gonna bring it up, okay. Boom, suddenly, the landlord wants to sell his building, and then here comes somebody else who wants to buy it, and right away, they're like, yeah, I'm gonna buy your building, and yeah, we're gonna have to double your rent. That's just the way it is, that's how it is everywhere else. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess, and there was just a little shell shock, what do we do? Is there something we can do? And somebody had mentioned, well, we could buy the building. And they were like, yeah, right, whatever, right? That can't happen, right? But then then it began, it got the ball rolling. They started looking for themselves. That there was this opportunity, an opportunity to collectively like organize and make a move. And one of those moves, the first move was to become a tenant association and stick to what they have been deemed under the city, which is what really excites me because they discovered their apartment was rent stabilized. And we just, in Salinas, we're still in this fight right now to keep these rental ordinances in place. But what we would hear, one of the arguments that we would hear from the landlords and from the property owners was like, well, if you're gonna have these rent stabilized units, then we're just gonna end up selling and somebody else is gonna come by and they're gonna raise the rent on you. And it was like, oh, that's scary, that thought of, right? Well, here in South Bronx, they were like, yeah.
It's an opportunity.
It was the opportunity, it was set up that way for them. And they, they took full advantage of it. The Urban Homestead Assistance Board, you have, the folks that we've been learning from, they were the ones who were able to support this group of organized residents and to help them acquire the building and in 2022, and then they were able to, through a whole process, they were able to give it back to, not give it back, but transfer the ownership back to the residents in 2024, so 2 years ago. So here's a clip we want to show.
A building here in Port Morris, the Bronx, just a few miles away. The tenants here say after a long legal battle, they're just a few months away from owning their own building. Since 2017, tenant Cortland Hankins has fought to stay in this building at an affordable price.
The new owner came in and made it pretty clear that our rents were going to go up and being increased pretty quickly and pretty significantly. 50% to almost doubling.
On the outskirts of gentrified Mont Haven stands 700 East 134th Street, a real estate hotbed. Hankins and other tenants also took their fight to court, but ultimately forced their landlord's hand to selling the building to them.
Sometimes it feels surreal because I have to pinch myself this is real, we did it.
With the help from local organizations and HPD, tenants purchased the building for under $4 million in 2022.
If I need something fixed, it gets fixed. I don't have to keep going back and forth with the landlord, hey, can you come and fix this? And him give excuses on why he can't fix it.
Hankins says the best advice for tenants at 2201 Davidson Avenue is
unity, sticking together throughout the process. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. The power is in our hands. We have to make sure that we walk with one.
In Fort Morris, the Bronx, Search Petrosian, CBS 2 News.
I have a question. Does any of these co-ops have a pathway for ownership? Because if this type of model saturates the market, there will be no pathway for real ownership. I mean, this is great because it gives residents an understanding of what it takes to own something, right, at the granular level, and then move into ownership. So does any of these co-ops ever have a pathway to that ownership of an actual properly deed and land?
How is that not real?
I wouldn't say that inside the co-op that would be possible. There have been examples where people have saved their money by living in a co-op and then went on to go get a standard traditional mortgage. I think that might be what you're talking about, a pathway to ownership, but it does give them the chance to accumulate disposable income to then go in. But no, that is not the purpose or the motive of these co-ops, is to build equity or even like home ownership, more of communal ownership.
It's to manage affordability permanently, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and so if we do that on the long term and saturate it, it won't give leeway for them to own at a later time. So is that something that the co-op can consider within that framework that, because he mentioned that with subsidies, they tend to stay there for 20 plus years, right? And that's great, but if we're staying there within 20 plus years, we see 3 generations. Within those generations, I'm sure that people want to own.
We already tried that, and that's what we got right now. That's what we're living in right now. Is that model of housing as equity instead of housing as a place where people live? 50 or 60 years ago, nobody thought of housing as some distant bank account that you could retire on.
But
That's
we're
a
talking
new,
about low
that's
income.
a new concept.
Even at low income
So
levels,
we see what
they can't
you see what that
afford to
model
pay.
is like all around us. That's why nobody can afford to live anywhere. We've got, a bazillion people, millions of people in this country that don't even have $500 for an emergency. So we already tried that. So I think it's time to focus on something here.
I'm
in
not
this
saying
room.
not focus,
It's a little
but
bit
people
different.
want to own property.
Yeah.
Well, like
Horacio,
Horacio said, is that a lot of the people in those units were able to send their kids to college, and then they were able to buy homes later, because you build that generational wealth because it's affordable.
They're saviors.
But you're not being that generational
And they educated
wealth
their
in that
children
unit.
so their
Yeah,
children
you're
can do
getting it.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being
From the
able
outside,
to survive and
But-
create
but
wealth
you-
in other ways.
I think a big point you made earlier too is that it's not about building your bank account over years. It's about living comfortably,
Without stress.
reasonably,
Stability.
over stability, over a long period of time, and then being able to pass that comfort, that
Your
that
calmness.
ease, that what is it, like a peace
Serenity.
of mind almost to
Yeah.
the next generation, rather than
Instead of
a
striving
bunch
and
of
striving.
assets
Yeah,
and
more
a
and more
full
and more.
trust in the state, right?
And nobody would be tricked into it.
Right.
'Cause
And then if somebody does want to go on and purchase properties in the future and all that, then this isn't for them. This
Right.
is not meant for everybody,
they'll have a choice.
right?
But it also, they have the choice, but it also have the savings, right?
Yeah.
So that's the intention.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention too is that in traditional affordable housing, like if you're renting, say you get a Section 8 voucher, and as your income goes up, so maybe you do better, you're now out of that housing. I think in this housing model, you stay. Like once you're in and you've bought in, and your income can go up, and then you can pass it on to your kids and grandkids, but you can stay in that housing. Is that correct?
Yes, and.
Yeah, with some caveats.
Yeah, with caveats. So it depends on again, the rules. Well, it depends on the rules of the association, but it also depends on the rules of the city or government agency that you're working with. Because the co-op can decide, no, we're not going to increase it. Generally, that's the case. Or you can pay a small increase, a small percentage as your income increases. So it's not saying that you have to stay at this income level, which is usually the problem with most low-income housing. But it's saying if your income goes up 10,000, you might pay 1% or something like that. So there's a slight fee depending on the rules of the co-op and the regulatory agreements in place. But
As well as the municipal,
yeah.
the accords and the county,
The county and city rules.
county and city rules and state.
Once you're independent from the government, from the city, from the county, from the bank, once you're independent, you decide whatever you want. You put your own rules. You adopt the bylaws according to everybody's needs. So if you wanna sell your equity, you make an assessment of your membership, and then the co-op pay you, and you go and buy a home outside. Many of the residents did that once they were having a pretty good job. and were able to buy a home outside. They bought their home outside. Some of them, they sell it to their sons, and some of them to a new member, and that's how you sell your equity. So it's a small savings on a limit equity co-op, but if you build another co-op that is not limited, then you get more. But when it's limited, it's a savings, but the major equity that you get in is in the present. You put in your money in where you're gonna decide if you're gonna buy a home outside or if you're gonna go to school. That's the main one.
I get that. The reason I asked that question, because in Seaside particularly, the reason we have an issue with ownership is because deeds were restricted to only white people. And that's why we got separated from Delray Oaks and Sand City. It's actually in the deed restriction. So when we talk about limited property ownership, there was a restriction there. And so now we're talking about permanent stability, affordability, but no pathway to probably ownership in the same community that we have roots for generations. So no, we haven't been in that same model because we've been systematically disadvantaged as Black and brown people. So that's why I'm asking about that ownership, because if we saturate that, people will never still have that opportunity to own if they so desire. Now, there's nothing wrong with staying at a permanent affordability, but that pathway, can that be figured out within the co-op, or is that something that a larger discussion that can bring in, like buying property? 52 acres was just given to Bakewell. That could be.
That's not a co-op.
No, I know, I understand that. I'm giving
Your scope.
my scope of the
Right.
longer outcome of that, because we've had limited stock in here and deed restrictions to Black and brown
But if we
people.
bring it back, we can say, one, that's a different scenario, but also we're talking about a mix of opportunities. There will still be home ownership, there will be still rental ownership, and there will be co-ops. So there will be a mix. And it's happening, like we mentioned, all across the country, all across the world. It's been like this and it's happening, and they all coexist. There isn't a one type of scenario. So this is really talking about a mindset shift change. So we're talking about not just to own the land, build it wealth, and so on. We're talking about a different mindset, so we have to really come at it a little more open. We do want to break everyone into a discussion activity, because it's been we've been engaging.
Back and forth. Yeah, it's been good. It's been a real robust conversation.
It's been really good. We want to take time for folks to talk together. So we wanted to talk about one item that's important to the process. So a lot of, Renee was going into like the how and how do you make this work. One of these things is the policy that you need in place as well. So the TOPA and the COPA is one of the policies that we want to try to implement at the cities and the county level here in Monterey. TOPA, quickly, is a tenant opportunity to purchase. And what that is when a building comes up for sale, if the law is in place, the landlord will be required to give the first opportunity to the tenants. So, right of first refusal. So the tenants can say, okay, we want to try to buy it, or we want to transfer our right to a nonprofit to buy it on our behalf that will work with them. And it gives the tenants a chance. So the tenants will have a certain timeline, like 7 or 15 days to make an offer and decide, or the landlord can then put it back on the market. And if they get a bona fide offer, then they have to come back to the tenants to match it.
And which was the example that we were pointing to. The nonprofit that did that was the UHAB, the folks that we're working with.
They built that policy before they had the policy in place?
There was in New York?
Yes.
Yes.
So this policy it's been in place in DC for the last 4 years. The COPA, the Community Opportunity to Purchase, is in San Francisco, and we give an example of the law here. And it's throughout the country. We're part of a network working to spread it in more places. It's actually in Berkeley and parts of San Jose as well. The COPA is the Community Opportunity to Purchase, and what that says in San Francisco, as an example, is there a list of approved nonprofits. So if a building of 15 units or more come up for sale, they have to send the building, the offer to the group, to the list. And the nonprofits can look at it and go, okay, we want to purchase it, we'll make an offer, or we'll pass right now. And then the landlord could go out to the market, if he gets an offer, if she gets an offer, send that offer back to the nonprofits to match it. And then they can decide if they want to offer or not. So it gives them, again, an opportunity for the community to stay involved, and those buildings can be converted to co-ops, or they can stay as rentals, but with the land trust or the residents owning it. So we've been starting the conversations with the county, and I've presented it to Mayor Williamson as something to discuss at a council level. But we're looking for this as an opportunity where the community can get involved to push these kind of policies locally as well. And the last part is that we're looking at funding as well as an option of passing a bond at the county level that could fund affordable housing. So that would take community engagement as well.
The direction that we're going.
Yeah.
So, want to get, let's get into, do we have time for?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
We got 10 minutes. Let's take let's take about 2-3 minutes. Check in with your neighbor. We'll give you about 3 minutes. Check in with your neighbor. What resonated with you? What questions do you have? All right, so really appreciate the energy, the conversations that we're hearing. Anybody want to share out what came up for you? What resonated? What stood out? Questions that still maybe surfacing?
I'll go first. What resonated for me was that I don't have to be a billionaire to be a part of a co-op.
She took our whole conversation, though. She was like, ear hustling.
No, I asked the easy question and she helped me and then they helped me too. So it made me feel confident and want to be a part of something like this.
I think for me, and kind of what we were just talking about, and what he was talking about earlier, is just like building that village within the co-op is such a cool concept, and being able to train residents to be able to maintain their own buildings and really not having to rely on outside services, but to really become resourceful within each co-op. And as Tyler was kind of expanding on, and having different co-ops working together in that way, kind of like that village to village support, but also it makes me think too of how empowering it is for residents to be able to take care of their own space. I know it hits a little different when you own your own like car or house or anything that you own that you want to you take pride in that, and you want to be able to put yourself into that rather than I don't know, building a whole garden but you're still paying rent to a landlord. It just hits a little different when you have that ownership and that pride. So having that collective pride in a place is really fascinating to think about. So yeah.
Definitely.
I even like the idea of even though it's not a must, but I like the idea of the shared space with like-minded people, like the teachers. We were talking about the unit that they purchased just for educators, and then in Salinas, like you said, the farm workers. I think that's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Because we all know we all got to get up and go to work at a certain time, so just pipe it on down.
I'm curious Horacio, when was that child care center in San Gerardo built? How long has it been in place?
It was 4 years later, after we moved in. We built it with the grant of Joe Serna in Sacramento. And after we built it, the whole community built it, we rented out to pay for the administration. And we rented to a child care center, which it has all over the California. We rented because it was someone that was going to be able to pay the rent. And at the same time, it was going to help the migrant workers that moved from Salinas to Yuma and Huron. So they get a free of charge.
So the child care is free?
Yeah.
What did she say?
They take care of 100 children. little kid. That's all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think certainly one of the things that resonates the most with me is kind of what people have already been saying. I think part of there's the idea of giving people access to stability and home ownership, which is really important. I also think it's really, really important, exactly this thing, like creating space for people to meaningfully, collectively make decisions about where they live and how they live. I think that's the thing that a lot of us are systematically denied, right? And so for a group of residents to say what we value is having quality childcare for our children, and we actually collectively can create the resources to do that, I think that's really impactful and really powerful. And I know that's one of the things that draws my interest to a co-op model is this like really meaningful grassroots community empowerment, right? How do we actually, and how do we take something that feels like a detriment? I don't individually make enough money to own a home. How do we turn that actually into an asset? Which means I actually have to turn to other people around me to be able to do this thing. So I'm very compelled by that. I feel like the question that I have is very specific, so maybe I should ask it after. But just, I'm also thinking about this for like my block, the people I know, my friends, my neighbors. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is like, to actualize this, a lot of the model is looking at like multi-unit dwellings, right? But I know a lot of the people I know who are struggling, they're in like individual homes that are owned by different landlords, and then, you know, all that they want, all the things. They want like, you know, to be able to take care of the house. Often they have the skills to take care of the house, but they're doing it for a landlord, right? Right. But then this is very specific too. So specifically to where I live, which is also in Seaside, this is my former neighbor. So you know, we still have a relationship and our friendship and our raising our kids, all support each other with our kids and stuff. But on our particular block, she had to move a little bit further out, but there's like a whole bunch of houses. And she's lived here a lot longer than me, so she knows a lot more about like the community than I do. But she was saying there's like 5 to 10 houses that are owned by the same landlord who bought them decades ago, and now they're like the inherited property of her children. I'm like, is there any way to try to cooperatively buy all those houses? Like, is that a possibility? Because I feel like that's the model that would probably work for where we are. And I'm just like, is that, like, could we all like appeal to like this one family and say, can we buy 10 of your houses? Is that?
Yeah, it is.
It is? Okay, that's dope. That sounds exciting.
It's all negotiation. It's all negotiation.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's
But it's
great.
also in a situation like that, just quickly, just to put the idea out there, it would be giving them the understanding that if you move that money to like a commercial property, they could pay less in interest and actually get more income coming back. So they, by selling the building, the houses, they could exchange, pay no taxes, but pay less in interest, in expenses, and get more in income.
So convince them it's more
Convince them
beneficial
it might be more
than-
beneficial to
Okay.
them. So it is a real estate conversation. It could go nowhere, but it could also show different.
That's where you all help, because I don't know how to have that conversation.
And that's a great segue to the QR code, to how those next steps, right? We're planting seeds right now, and we're learning from the existing models that have been here for over 50 years. We're just barely discovering who's in our neighborhood. So what we're inviting y'all to just take a screenshot. It'll take you to a Google form. Please be able to put in your information. But before that,
Oh, you heard me.
yeah.
He doesn't miss a thing. He's already missing it.
Wow, you're like Batman over here. I just wanted to say, from the perspective of an elected official that would be potentially passing policy to help support something like this, you all play a really important role in that, in showing up and sharing support behind something like that, because there's a lot of different priorities, people have a lot of different interests, that it's competitive, and so the more people stand up and support it, there's also a lot of misconceptions around it too, right? So it's not about it just being a good idea and it happening. So, you know, ask yourselves, ask your neighbors, to like show up and speak out when the time comes for these types of policies to be pushed for prioritization.
Especially because we but we saw how landlords came together in Salinas to oppose certain things, and then they can themselves
100%.
form their own groups to make something like this difficult. So it's like, it's just even more important that we show up and kind of outnumber that, because we do.
Outnumber them.
A lot of people feel like when it comes up, when a topic of housing comes up, they just kind of like shy away, because it's like, it's so obscure, it's not for me, like no, like it's never gonna happen for me. So it's like, we really have to like help convince people that this is really an opportunity that can change the game, right?
You can't do it alone.
Can't do it alone, yeah.
Are there plans for having like a monthly or every 2 week or any kind of a like ongoing core meetings and organizing so that we can get build those, that's it?
Give us
So it's that, it's us taking it from here and going, okay, how can I get involved, what am I bringing, what talents, what skills, what ideas am I bringing? And together we figure out the next steps.
And just like chitter chatter, like I've been talking to people about it, like similar to you, I know people who live in like townhomes in Seaside, but there are like 4 of them and they're owned by the same person. I'm like, hey, how cool would that be if like you own this, like with your neighbors? You know, it's like, what? Like, and so just kind of like getting that buzz created so that when we do have events like this, that it's like, oh, remember that conversation we talked about? Like, we're actually gonna talk more about it, so just like having that buzz.
And there are co-ops that are formed in single-family housing, you know, and so it is a model as well, you know. So it's just a collective ownership.
Right now we've got housing, I know in Monterey and Salinas and other places, you can see it's just been bought up and it's just sitting there going to rot. And they're incentivized by government, you know, by the taxation. I mean, that should be something I think Salinas has talked about fixing, if I'm not mistaken. I think they have something, maybe Seaside is thought of that.
Seaside is considered the vacancy tax.
Yeah, but you're just sitting and rotting and being an eyesore when, you know, they're really be penalized rather than incentivized.
Work with, The Seaside one is, I think, what
It's for businesses, it's not for the
only.
housing market yet.
We are talking about it in Monterey though. But the challenge is that there's litigation going on with San Francisco's vacancy tax ordinance, and so it's like, how much effort do you put into something that, anyways, that's a whole other conversation.
You're basically waiting and seeing.
Most of the younger generations that are my nephews and niece, they're always thinking, how do I buy a home, but because the prices are so high. And one of the things that I saw when I was managing the Sangrado Co-op was that the money that we borrow from the USDA, we pay double the money that they lend us. And we create so much taxes, so much work, labor. One co-op that we had about 800 workers. Imagine all the economy, the power of the economy that we were given to the county and to the state and to the United States. So the main policy that we need in California, and maybe United States, is to have money available at low interest rates. And not even saying, okay, let's give you a grant. It's not necessary. Once you have a big bucket of money where you can build a co-op and make the members have a place to live and nobody can kick them out, then themselves they're going to be paying off the loan. But it has to be, in a way, a low interest rate. Because when we were doing it in Seaside, it was 9%. It was very high. And that's how we were able to pay them back. And once we were free, we built our own bylaws. We built our own bylaws, and we built the way the members wanted to live and the way the members want the co-op to be administered. And it can be done. because there's over here, just to buy a home is very difficult. If you're not making $100,000,
$150.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
it's not affordable for young people right now. Somebody has to be making a lot of money to buy a home right now. That's not the way.
But this is one way, right? This is one of several. We want to appreciate everyone's participation. We're gonna keep doing this. Obviously, like we said, this is our first round. We really would appreciate any ideas. You can go ahead and, enter them into the form. Ideas, questions.
And you also have our contact information on the flyers that we gave you, on the slides as well. But we're gonna continue. This is the beginning. We've done one in Salinas, one here. Taking on the road, there will likely be one in Monterey, partnering with the city as we work that out. And so the intention is to spread the word, to spread the idea, to spread the hope that, you don't have to struggle alone. If we work with your neighbors, work with the community, we can make a difference in our housing and our economic futures. So this is the beginning, and we're inviting you guys to the conversation, to work on it together and figure out how we do this going forward. Spreading the word, bringing in more people, creating a concept, passing policy, raising local funding.
Sharing knowledge.
We all have skills, we all have something to bring to the table. So that's how we're working. This is a community effort.
All right, thank you.